I am Nat.
And I'm Guy. And you're watching American Greatness, where we cover the midterms, the 2028 election, and beyond, all from a distinctly conservative perspective.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah.
But now, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us out. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by December. You can be one of the ones that helps us out. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live. Please join the conversation. That's the whole point of doing this whole thing live. And also, thank you so much to all our members. We have memberships. And that's it.
Well, I'll say our main two shows are Alberta Independence. We talk a lot about the downfall of Canada, and American Greatness. They're starting to become interlinked with the interference from Mark Carney in these not only midterm elections, but this tariff war as well.
Exactly. And let me say hello really quickly over on RUMBLE to Real French that says, hello, let's go, Nat and her guy.
I'm just the sidekick at this point.
He's just here. Exactly. But we don't have any comments on YouTube, so should we start?
Yeah, let's get into communism, socialism in America first.
Yes, communist socialism.
Oh, why don't you introduce it?
Okay, I will. I'll try to. Communism gets closer and closer to the United States, and while it has been that way for a very long time, it's knocking at the door, and people don't seem to be as panicked as they probably should be.
9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
So let's start with this from N Wokeness. And a very clear example says, Melat Kiros, DSA, wants to abolish ICE and give full citizenship to every illegal migrant. There's about over 20 million right now. She just won the primary in Colorado.
Yeah, open borders was absolutely destroying America under Joe Biden. And now their policy platform is that, plus a whole lot more. Let's get into it.
Abolishing ICE is just one step, right? Democrats have been in power multiple times over the last few decades and did nothing to address the immigration reform that we actually need.
Expenditures, increased spending.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think there has to be an immediate pathway for every single undocumented immigrant that's here in this country today that does not require them to shell out thousands of dollars to go through the process, for it to take decades.
And pause it for a moment. She said undocumented workers. This is absolutely ridiculous.
At a time to be able to get to citizenship, an immediate pathway to citizenship, and then just abolishing ICE is just one.
And of course, all of these ideas make no sense for any common sense person. However, when you live in an idealistic, utopic fantasy land, it sounds great until you start considering the actual implications and what happens when a country has no borders, while every single other country surrounding it, I would say maybe except Canada, does have borders and does have policies that try to stop this.
Well, open borders, defund the police, defund the military, replace fathers with the government, and confuse children. This is the DSA platform, and the Democrats are going to be absolutely eaten alive if they don't put a stop to it.
And that's the thing. The Democrats let this in through the front door, thinking it was a great idea to get young voters and idealistic voters and people to just vote for them, essentially, with these moronic ideas and with the help of people like Hassan Piker, which we saw right there, who is one of the main voices saying insane things, still being allowed to do so on YouTube, and yet other people get banned for way randomer things.
Well, I will say maybe a big thank you to Hassan Piker, because at least he just states what the DSA is actually about. A lot of these other DSA candidates try to soft sell it like, oh, communism is no different than the fire department, the police department, or the library, hiding the much more insidious policies of open borders, defund the police, and defund the military.
And because the Democrat Party has been allowing this to cook within its ranks for a while now, some of them are trying to go completely against it and say, no, that's not us. Please don't be scared. Please continue to vote for us because we're in the middle of a huge mess that we created ourselves. But others are saying that it's a great idea, apparently. Lips of TikTok says, is the rise of the DSA good for your party? Being Chuck Schumer, Democrat, being asked and saying that they're a big tent party. Very similar to what Gavin Newsom said recently, too, which conflicts with what a lot of other big Democrat names have been saying, trying to distance themselves from the insanity that is the Democratic Socialists of America.
And Manu.
Thank you. Is the rise of the DSA good for your party?
Look, we are a big tent party, and being a big tent party is a strength, not a weakness. And Manu.
Let me translate for you. Communism is a strength, not a weakness. Canada is basically giving the roadmap to the United States right now. Americans should be thanking Canadians because they can look at their future if the Democrats get power again.
Not just Canada, but you can look at the entirety of Latin America and what they suffered for decades under essential communist rule, in some places actual communist rule, and the terrible ideas and where the economies went. You can look at Argentina, you can look at Venezuela, you can look at Cuba, you can look at Nicaragua currently. All of this has already been tried, and while people like Hassan Piker and a lot of others within the DSA that go train to a lot of these actual communist countries to learn how to use the tactics, but in a more modern and more enticing way, I guess, for young people, the people that live there are actually suffering and trying to escape to go to the United States.
Well, it looks like a lot of these Western countries are turning towards socialism and communism. I think they want to adopt the Chinese model. They were always praising them. We see a lot of Central and South American countries embracing capitalism under Donald Trump and the Shield of the Americas, which is absolutely fantastic to see.
And that should tell you something, that when the people, without the influence of funding, like from USAID, once they got cut off by Trump, start electing more center or right-wing people and parties that have common sense ideas that don't veer into communism and socialism, that should tell you something, that when not under the influence and when not under the cash flow of people within the United States that wanted to continue to enact these plans, people have common sense. People don't want communism and they don't want to be poor standing in a bread line for 2 days.
I think there's a couple Democrats left with at least their head screwed halfway on. I think the next clip we're going to show one of those individuals, and I'm glad he's calling them out. And there's a few Democrats online that are also calling this out. They want this out of the party. But I think the majority of Democrats are so hungry for power, and orange man bad, MAGA, 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 they'll do anything to get back in power, including letting the DSA in the front door.
Exactly. The Vigilant Fox says Bill Maher's audience audibly gasps when he reads what the Democratic Socialists of America are actually saying out loud. And that's also a danger, that many people aren't 100% online, 100% informed, and have lives to live. So they're not looking at what a lot of the candidates that say one or two things that might sound okay for them and then end up voting for them say on a regular basis and want to actually enact, stating explicitly that those are their goals.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic. Bill Maher is actually calling this out because he's a Democratic insider. So some Democrats will actually open up and listen to it.
And finally, new rule: Donald Trump has told 1 trillion lies, but when he says the Democratic Socialists of America are actually communist, that's not one of them. And it's not hard to prove it, just by quoting the DSA and their candidates. J.D. Vance was on the show, and I told him that if the Democratic Party keeps going in the direction of the DSA, my vote was in play. And all I heard all vacation was, oh my God, you're a Republican now. No, that's not what I said. I said in
And pause
play.
it for a quick moment. And him saying his vote is in play, I think a lot of Democrats' votes are going to be in play. It's not Trump running in the next election. It's going to be a J.D. Vance and a Marco Rubio, who are a lot more milquetoast to the non-politically engaged here.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. Because not a week goes by where I don't read about some newly chosen, exciting new face in the Democratic Party. And then when that face opens its mouth, the Communist Manifesto or some other crazy shit comes out. Again, let's just read the quotes. The DSA platform says you work as much as you are able and no more than needed. If that was any closer to Karl Marx's dictum, from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs, they'd be sued for plagiarism. New York Mayor Mondani once tweeted Karl Marx's words exactly. They're not trying to hide it. Their most popular influencer, Hassan Piker, thinks communism is so groovy. He laments the fall of the two of the most murderous regimes in history, the Soviet Union and Chairman Mao's China.
And pause it. And I think these two right here represent the new Democratic Party and the old Democratic Party, the DSA and your traditional Democrats. But even the traditional Democrats have gone extremely progressive and woke over the last few years. Wokeism is what led into the DSA, communism and socialism, what we're seeing now.
His top aide, Sia Weaver, said if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize property, it's over, and impoverish the white middle class. What? That's a goal? You know you're supposed to scare people into voting for you, right? One of the new soon-to-be Democratic congresspeople, Darlisia Chevalier, supports seizing all properties from landlords and said seize the means of production. Mendami has said the end goal is seizing the means of production. I think they want to seize the means of production.
And again, Mondani is trying to do this in New York, but there is a national strategy going on in Canada of you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Americans better start paying attention. They're doing this on a provincial level, which would be a state level, as well as attacking private property from a federal level.
Now, maybe you missed that in school or missed school altogether, but that's communism. Now the coalition within the DSA, called the Marxist Unity Group, is in ascendance, and I must take them at their word when their words include, our commitment is to the long-term struggle for a fully liberated classless society, in a word, communism. What do they have to do? Tweet out, elect more communists? Oh yeah, Sia Weaver did that. Yes. Good, I'm glad you're shocked.
And we can leave it there. And one thing I will say, if they go down this DSA path, somehow the Democratic Party win and the DSA take control, they're going to severely weaken the United States. And then you're going to see a real communist country that's been communism for a long, long time take control in a power vacuum, and that will be China.
The problem is also that people, as I was saying, and as Bill Maher there exemplified, don't fully know what these people are saying. They're not connected 24/7 to what's happening in politics. So when one of these people opens their mouths and something resonates with them saying, oh, but we just want to help people, we don't think that there should be so much inequality, it sounds great, but once implemented, you see what happens in places like New York City, which already elected a DSA member in Zoran Mamdani, and now they don't even have any idea what to do with the idea of government-run grocery stores, because now their plan is not actually helping those that they were saying it was going to help.
Well, I do talk to a liberal here or there, and what they seem to think is, oh, the DSA is not a problem. There's just a few candidates. That's not the case. It's absolutely infested. 1/3 of Democratic supporters, this would be the voters, not the politicians, actually identify or support the DSA. And you're going to see more and more candidates pop up because there is a mass grassroots base of support on the Democratic side. Wokeism is what led to socialism and communism in the Democratic Party.
Well, when we go further back, the infiltration of essentially every single institution, from education to health to government itself. And that is how they were able to build up to this point, and then start attracting the younger people that they were able to slowly indoctrinate, I would say. No, that's a big word, but slowly indoctrinate within the school system itself, thinking that these are good ideas.
Well,
not everybody thinks they're good ideas. But with Bill Maher, for example, I would also say, yes, great credit to him. He's realizing, but he was spouting a lot of them, not same things, but things that led to the DSA's rise not that long ago. So while I say good on him for calling it out and good on some other Democratic Party members for saying it and saying this might not be such a good idea, it's a little bit too late.
Well, thanks for a little bit of sanity in the world. Let's get to the next clip because this just came out and absolutely fantastic on the classic Donald Trump for pointing it out.
Yeah, this is from a while ago, but Eric Doherty says, quote, Donald Trump says America needs to destroy the Communist Democrats at all costs in the coming election. Your sane Democrats are forced to vote in a way they would not vote because they have no spine then. Why are they voting that way? Saying we have communists, we have a party that's been infiltrated by bad thought, bad policy. I talk about socialism, but this isn't socialism, this is largely communism. And what he gets even a bit wrong there is that socialism is the soft communism or the path towards communism. It's just communism light. It's the same thing.
Communists, we have a party that's been infiltrated by bad thought, by bad policy. I used to talk about socialism, but this isn't socialism. This is largely communism. This is very dangerous for our country. I'm not saying good guy, bad guy. I'm just saying this is big, big trouble for our country. Likewise, many others. And what's happened is your sane Democrats, of which there are fewer and fewer, are forced to vote in a way that they would not vote. And they don't even believe in their vote. But if they don't vote that way, they lose power.
And their silence is deafening. They are.
And there's the thing. I think there's a door opening for Democrats to come over to the Republican side, especially with the modern Republican being MAGA and a lot of the policies really just being policies from the Democrats in the 90s and early 2000s there. If the Democratic Party isn't going to solve this issue with the DSA, the Republicans and the MAGA definitely are.
And the United States has been fighting communism for the longest time. Wars have been fought. People have risked and lost their lives in the fight against communism, and yet they seem to forget, they seem to allow a lot of these things to come into their institutions almost without noticing that it's happening. But thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't done so yet, please don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, and like the video as well. And now let's go back to your comments because you're still here. Now there's a lot of comments, so let me read them all. Shauna Vision says, good evening, and thank you for being here. And hold on, Silver Feet, hello, waving. Dawn says, hi, NNG and everyone. Another great day in Edmonton. Oh, good. And Philip Espa says, hello, Nan and Guy. I hope there's no trolls tonight. Well, it was fun last night, wasn't it? Loeffner got into the Fringe's stream yesterday, and we had a good laugh. Oh, great. I like sometimes fighting with trolls. Helps keep you sharp. Miss Altoad says, there's such a big tent party in America that they rely on the votes of non-Americans. Exactly.
Well, and I will say something. The clip volume is a little down. We tried to fix it before the show. It appears it didn't work, so we may have to turn
the
up.
Trump one was low.
Okay,
the other ones were fine. Don says, yes, he's so uninformed and deluded, and there's a lot of people like that. But worryingly enough as well, there's a lot of people that aren't people, that are just literal, nowadays are just literal bots and created by AI. Option Trader says, I come in peace. Thank you.
Always good to see you, Option Trader.
Don says, or should I say malinformed? Well, informed by Canadian media, probably. That troll from yesterday. Option Trader says, this door was opened by the vacuum left by the nuclear bomb of Harris's failed campaign. Failed campaign. Well, I think it was a little bit earlier, too. Because, I mean, we saw a lot of the retarded protests that were happening even before that.
Well, you can literally trace it back. It started in academia and it went out from there. But as academia got more and more crazy, more and more left-leaning, more living in their heads than in reality. This is where we seen the turn. And eventually it got to where it's at now, which is, I think, the final stage, the DSA and communism.
And it continues, they were the fringe, but 2024 swung that door wide open for communists. But also, and I do agree, the vacuum left by common sense, sane Democrats, if there even is that thing, and thinking that allowing a lot of these crazy thoughts and crazy leaders to come in and become faces of the party was going to get them more votes.
Well, it's absolutely insane because all this stuff the DSA is talking is absolutely 100% normalized within Canada. People love this kind of shit, and it's not good for the country. Canada's going to pay the long-term price because there are long-term consequences to policies like this.
Philip Espa, very right, says, for the American viewers, we have our own acronym for the DSA in Canada called the NDP, the New Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Ironically, that might be the name the DSA chooses for the Democrats if they successfully take over. They could just merge them together. I mean, if you saw those clips coming out from the latest NDP meeting, rally, what was it?
Yeah, I think it was a convention. That's what it was.
Yes, convention of retards. Option Trader says communism, socialism, fascism are all Marxism. The person, aka tyrant, just adjusts his tweaks on it exactly and says it's all the Hegelian dialectic. Marx was an acolyte of Hegel. And then, oh no, hold on. Over on RUMBLE, Real Fringe says, can't wait to hear your thought about Kenny and Notley teaming up against independence.
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about it on tomorrow's episode, but it's two failures. Like, what are you going to do here? This is the best they got. They were supposed to have Pierre Poilievre stumping on the ground. Danielle Smith is kind of distancing herself from this. On a lot of stances, she's actually taking the stances of the independent side because they just don't know what to do. They have absolutely nothing. Their poll numbers have started to tank. They try to confront Alberta independence at this point. I think their only option is to try to rig an election.
Real Fringe also says, hey, if Trump can rename Lake Ontario, which we will talk about in a little bit, Lake America, then we can just get Alberta independence.
Yeah, we got a whole segment about Lake Ontario, and he actually signed it into law now.
Baby, hello, thank you for being here. Says the president is a master troll and Canadians fall for it every time. Who cares about a name for a lake that sits half in each nation?
Yeah, and when he was doing this with the Americans, it's definitely a troll. When he was doing it with the Mexicans, not so much a troll. He wanted to be called the Gulf of America. He's restructuring the global economy so that America will be the center of oil distribution, and most of that oil distribution is going to sit in the Gulf of America or the Gulf of the Mexico, whatever you like to call it there.
PB says you can't win a war of words with the president. That New York fight don't stop.
Well, it's great to see that Canadian propaganda does not work on Americans, and we have a few clips coming up later that the Canadian media has been inviting a lot of Americans from the administration, and it has not been going well for the Canadian mainstream media.
No, and Real Fringe says, I hope Trump drives Carney insane. Well, and at the same time, I think Carney is actually using a lot of these opportunities for himself and his own plans.
Well, they're all old buddies. I mean, we got a clip of Lutnick later. They've known each other from absolute years.
And Option Trader says the DSA will never take over. This is the land of 1776. you'd be surprised it kind of happened once before. There was that threat that was getting more and more imminent, and these ideas are for some reason still being treated as valid and like something that can convince people to go vote. It also shows a bad education that has been allowed to happen in the US for too long.
Well, the natural immunity to the DSA is MAGA, and MAGA is going strong right now. So,
Yes, sorry. I was adjusting my contact lens. Steve Zafaro, hello. Thank you for being here. It
good to
says,
see ya.
God bless the thought, but the DSA is a massive threat to our blue cities.
yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's where the big voter blocks lie as well. And the Democrats themselves have taken over cities and left the rural areas. And now the DSA is taking over those very cities from the inside out. I don't like the DSA, but it's an absolute fantastic strategy to take over the Democratic Party.
Because they allowed it in.
Well, and this is
They're
why
all
I have no confidence in the Democrats to actually get rid of it. I hear some concerns here or there from Bill Maher or Wick TV or some other things. But it's really up to MAGA and the Republican Party to get rid of this and win in the midterms as well as win in 2028 and send a message. DSA doesn't fly in America, neither does communism.
Exactly. But another side of this as well, and we've been talking about the threat and the potential possibility that Canada might be creating for itself to try to interfere in the US midterms, which is insane. But we now see former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland from Canada saying that they should start a PSYOP against Americans, which is completely insane.
We will make America great again.
And let's start with this.
Well,
article,
and
actually.
this was absolutely insane. I seen this on another show. I thought it was fake. I had to go verify it. The fact that Christina Freeland is putting out statements saying we need to have a PSYOP on the American public. Yesterday, I was talking about Canadian interference in the midterm elections, as well as possibly 2028. I mean, Mark Carney's teaming up with Barack Obama, George Soros' son, as well as a lot of other big players from the Democratic Party, hiring them directly into the administration. And I had a lot of comments coming down saying, oh, yeah, right, they're going to interfere. It's coming from the horse's mouth right now. And Christina Freeland was running for PM.
And she looks like a horse as well. But from The Last Refuge says, quote, former Canadian Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland says Canada must focus on psychological operations against Americans now. Those who have followed the Canadian trade squatter strategy from NAFTA through the USMCA likely know former Canadian Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and her manipulative narcissism. Today, the purple sausage reappears from Kiev, where she is, by the way, she's in Ukraine right now, leading the Ukraine reinvestment and money laundering effort on behalf of Vladimir Zelensky.
And you can leave it there. She's not just in Ukraine, she holds one of the top positions, and that's how they're laundering money in and out of that country. And another thing I'll kind of say here, Iran, tariffs, a draft, Ukraine, you name it. They want to flood the zone right now so people don't know which way's up. They want to flood it from the Democrats, the DSA, as well as the woke right. They're trying to take over the independent media space, which Trump used to own. It's up to independent media content creators that still have their head on straight to show their support for the Republicans, for Donald Trump, and say, no, he has a good strategy. He's had a good strategy from the beginning. The war in Iran is not boots on the ground, massive war. What it is a controlled incursion where they go after the Iranians economically to break their back, and that will have a long-term effect on success for the United States.
And we've also been seeing some Canadians like Doug Ford and Olivia Chow going on US mainstream media and not being able to answer the very simple questions that they were being asked, or fully backtracking on things they said before, like they want to go to war with the US or they want to cut off energy, like Doug Ford said. And then with Wolf Blitzer said, no, I actually didn't mean it. Oops, I messed up. But now we're also seeing the American counterparts going on Canadian media, and Canadian media has no idea what to do because, once again, in Canada, they're essentially fully paid by the federal government, which makes the American counterparts look incredibly competent compared to what Canadians do when they go on their TV.
Well, Rosemary Barton looks absolutely shook in her boots. Usually she's a little pit bull attack dog, not when the Americans come in. I guess she knows her place.
Yes, because Jameson Greer was on with her. Rapid Response 47 says, U.S. Trade Representative schools the Canadian host, Rosemary Barton, saying we're doing what's right for the United States. We offered to bring Canada along, but it wasn't good enough for them. And their little narrative and their little fear factor that they've been trying to play ever since Carney walked away from this non-official trade talks that they were having is fully falling apart when they bring people like this in.
Why would Canada sign a deal without even any guarantees that you would continue to respect the deal, given that you haven't respected CUSMA?
So which deal is that we haven't respected that we've signed over the past year? Like, I'm just not familiar with that. I mean, we have made
you've
a dozen deals.
You've added tariffs. I'm talking about Canada. You've added tariffs, right, above and beyond the free trade agreement, and that sort of contradicts what a free trade agreement is, of course.
So we have USMCA, and we built into it a 6-year review because in our view, you can't just sign an agreement and never revisit it. If you have it eternally, like if I'm a business person, which we try to be in the American government, we try to think about what's good for workers, what's good for companies. You don't have an agreement that just goes on forever without ever being revisited. We have not renewed USMCA. USMCA includes specific exclusions for national security measures. And so steel, aluminum, autos, these are all national security measures for us that fall within the exclusions within USMCA. So we're doing what's right for the United States. We've offered to bring Canada along. Wasn't good enough for them, and so we are where we are.
And she looked absolutely shook there. She did not want to press back whatsoever. He put her in her place. I mean, he had a million other talking points he could have gone into. He is the main trade negotiator for the United States. He could have brought up Mexico and said, well, they're in official negotiations. And when you get into official negotiations, which Canada hasn't done, you can actually build in a mechanism so you are not subject to future tariff threats as long as those negotiations are active.
And the fact that Jameson Greer had to explain that to her while she was trying to continue with the narrative that once again, because she essentially works for the state propaganda machine, she had to put out there. And that's what I've been told, that's what I've heard. And something that I continuously forget to bring up is that Canada is completely reliant on the US for military purposes. And he kind of brought it up there too, that in terms of security and being able to continue to be partners on that sense, this is also affecting it. So Canada, get your head on straight. Kirk Lubinwald says, quote, cut off or tariff Canada's oil exports to the US? Horrible idea. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith does a fantastic job breaking it down, and one of the few premiers that apparently now decided to say the opposite of what she's been doing.
And we can go right into this clip. This was actually a fantastic statement. She gave it last night, and one of our viewers kept talking about it on the show, and then it popped up right after we got off air. Why don't we play it? It's absolutely fantastic. Only Danielle Smith and Jamil Javani have an alternative plan to elbows up dollar for dollar tariff. Let's destroy the Canadian economy in real time as fast as we can. Now, I might not like Danielle Smith because she's against Alberta independence, but even a broken clock is right twice a day.
And if you don't know who Danielle Smith is, she's a premier or like governor of Alberta.
Although I understand the need to respond strongly to these tariffs, I cannot think of a more disastrous policy decision than cutting off or taxing Alberta's oil to the United States. Doing so would absolutely devastate the Canadian economy. It would not only extinguish the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Albertans, it would economically hobble our friends and neighbors in other provinces to the east. Let me explain why. And it's important that this be understood by every Canadian. If Canada were to put, let's say, at 50%...
And pause it really quick, and she's going to do a fantastic job laying it all out, why you don't want to go into a tariff war with the United States, why you probably should have taken the deal. She doesn't go that far to say that, but she was having to educate other premiers like Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, which is one of the most crucial provinces in Canada. And the fact that he was dumb to all of this information, and he said that on live TV, we showed that clip yesterday, and it was absolutely jaw-dropping.
% export tariff on the 4 million barrels of oil that we export daily to the United States. The United States would immediately respond with a 50 to 100% export tariff on oil and natural gas that they export to Ontario, along with millions of barrels of diesel fuel and gasoline that Ontario and Quebec import from the Midwest. This would bring the economies of Ontario and Quebec to a grinding halt. Meanwhile, all those refineries in the United States that currently use Alberta's heavy oil would start looking to Venezuela for replacement heavy oil.
And pause it really quick. We have a story later on about Venezuela. They are opening up that market massively. They're cutting a new deal. And this has put Canada in a really bad situation. They have even less leverage than they thought they had.
First, the pipelines northward to get it to Midwest refineries. As a result, we would lose the United States as a customer entirely and likely forever. This would result in the loss of about 500,000 jobs at a minimum, mostly in Alberta, but also hundreds of thousands of jobs in Ontario and Quebec. And if we cut off our oil entirely, what then? The same results, but even worse. The United States would, of course, respond and cut off all gasoline and diesel from their refineries to Ontario and Quebec, right as we turn into fall and winter. And unlike Canada, the United States has strategic oil reserves that Canada does not. So although their gasoline prices will increase, they will be able to keep them at relatively manageable prices, just as they have done through the Iran war. And without strategic oil reserves, Canada has no way to supply Ontario and Quebec with the oil, natural gas, and fuels that they would need in a timely fashion. The Toronto Stock Exchange would nosedive, along with millions of Canadians' investments, particularly our seniors, and small and medium and large energy companies across Canada would shutter and lay off their employees, unable to find a market for their product. There is a better way forward.
And this is exactly what the Americans have to be thinking. They know the Canadians are going to be coming back to the table, groveling. At least that's what they're thinking. And if they look at the political landscape in Canada right now, you see a couple by-elections coming up. And maybe Mark Carney is trying to get the elbows up again to win those by-elections. Or maybe there's a lot more long-term strategy. If they refuse to go back to the negotiating table before the midterms, that means he's trying to sabotage the midterms. I think they're trying to feel it out right now to see how much of an impact they can have in those midterms. But the fact that they would even try something like this close to the midterms, it's very likely Donald Trump is going to punish them, pull out of the USMCA after the midterms, and announce a bilateral deal with the Mexicans.
And in case you didn't know, and that was Premier Daniel Smith from Alberta, Alberta wants its own independence. It wants to leave Canada because it's sick and tired of all of this and of being used as a pawn, but also as a piggy bank for the rest of Canada, because it is the most productive province within Canada, which means that they end up, in a very socialist way, giving remittance payments to every single other province, most of them in the east with the biggest cash out. And Alberta Premier Daniel Smith doesn't want Alberta to become independent. She's been trying to say, oh, no, please stay. And I think this gave her a chance to show, no, we can continue to work with the U.S. Please, please, please don't leave. Please don't, Albertans don't get angry. Please stay. I think that's what the message she's actually giving. She's saying, I want to fight against this ridiculousness from the other premiers because this actually encourages more people to want to vote for independence.
Well, Canada has their elbows up. Alberta and Saskatchewan can see the light. They understand that their neighbors to them, their south are their best friends, and they want a deal. They don't want to go down the dark path Canada is going down, and Alberta will have a choice on October 19th to send a message to Ottawa and say, we want to be free. We want to be our own country. We want to control our own destiny and pick our own trading partners. And the trading partner that we want is the United States.
We've also been talking about the potential that this might be a plan by Carney and probably whoever is on top of him to try to disturb or interfere within the U.S. midterms, and which is why the Canadians haven't been fully clear on what made them walk away from the table. There's no transparency there. And they came out to say that it was all because of French and the French language and the U.S. not wanting to respect that from Quebec.
Look, when the American administration talks, especially Lutnick and a lot of these insiders, you just believe them. You can tell they're just telling the truth and they're annoyed at what happened. And he even gives a lot of examples that make a lot of sense. There is a good chance the Canadians are going to come groveling back before the midterms after the snap elections or the by-elections within Canada.
Tables Out says, quote, bombshell. Lutnick says Carney orchestrated the entire U.S.-Canada trade deal collapse, saying, we never uttered the word French once. I spoke to Carney twice in the 2 days before it collapsed. He scuttled the deal to help the Quebec Liberal Party beat the PQ in October.
Long, at least 10 times in the last month. I spoke to Mark Carney twice in the 24 hours before this ended. Twice. I have texts back and forth with Mark Carney. I have a long-standing relationship with him from when he worked at Goldman Sachs way back when, let alone when he was at the Bank of England. So I've known him a long time. So it's easy for me to communicate with him, right? Canada has the best trade deal in the world before we started. We negotiated, and Canada was going to have the best trade deal in the world. And what happened was that Canada walked away. We had a deal. We shook hands. The president announced it, right? Everybody was positive. Canada made the decision for political purposes. They wanted to walk away. This is politics only. If you think I ever said the words French, do I care about how the Quebecois speak?
And pause it just for a quick second. A lot of people might not know who Howard Lutnick is, but he's negotiating a lot of these tariff deals and a lot of these frameworks around the world. He's one of Donald Trump's close advisors and friends for a long, long time. So when he says something, it's important you listen.
Matter less to America. We don't care. So the fact is, we never brought those words up. This is manufactured, and that's why the president put out a truth saying it was a complete lie. Right? It was manufactured. So there's the Sovereignty Party trying to run, and they're in the lead in Quebec. And so this was Mark Carney manufacturing something that would try to keep them from winning. And then you have Alberta has an independence resolution. These are elections in October. So he's making this a political thing for Canada. And my guess will be, as soon as his elections are over, you're going to see a plane full of Canadian negotiators flying down and go, come on, we'll give it to you before your election. We're just being used by them, right? That's what happened. That's why it ended. It didn't happen for math. The math was sensational. It was a great deal that we shook hands. Who sees those? Like, what is that? That's a construction product. It's a whole different category. It was never raised. These were things they put in order to make it end. You know, when someone doesn't want the deal, they make up and say, oh, I'll do the deal with you only if you wear green. And you're like,
okay,
but I'm
and
wearing...
you can leave it there. And I think that is the correct short-term vision there, that Carney wants to win these by-elections and he's getting Canada's elbows up again, as well as looking at, I can have a huge impact in Quebec as well as Alberta, or at least some impact in Alberta. But I think there's a midterm vision and a long-term vision. The midterm vision, if Carney wants to try to interfere in the midterms, you're not going to see negotiators go down there and try to negotiate a deal. And the long-term vision might be he wants to collapse the Canadian economy just enough to get provinces to come to the federal government for bailouts so he can offer bailouts for federalization.
Meaning he'd control, and the federal government would control even further what happens within Canada and the provinces, even more than they already do. But also, and we've been talking about this as well, that if he did want to impact the midterms, then that might be the reason why Canada's being not transparent at all with why they walked away, the reasoning, and why they're coming up with stupid things like, oh, it was a French language that they don't want to label bottles, or that they don't want to respect Quebec. And it makes a lot of sense what Lutnick is saying there as well, that might be the reason why. Thank you so much, and please don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers before December. You can help us out and also like the video if you like it. But now let me go back to your comments, because I saw, thank you so much to Steve Surfaro for the $9.99 super chat.
We really do appreciate all the super chats. Yes. They help the channel keep going. So thank you, Steve.
Exactly. Says, hold on. Oh, I lost it. No. Come back. Okay. Says, Guy, you're right. There are only a few content creators like you two and D-Day Cobra who back MAGA because of common sense. Difficult for CCs to step over the line.
Well, I know you watch a lot of American independent media. If anybody watches American independent media and wants the best channel for as a Trump supporter that's getting a lot of attention now, but he doesn't seem to have been bought out, or he's not taking the payoffs, that's Ace American Fire. It's the one show I have to watch on a daily basis, and it's all about American politics from a MAGA perspective.
And we're not connected. You just really like
No, I just really like them. I watch them on a daily basis. Usually I spend about 5 hours getting all my stories in the morning, and then I listen to Ace American Fire, and there's one or two things I missed, so then I throw it in there.
But thank you so much, Steve. And I mean, it's unfortunate that we're at this crossroads now where we're the retarded right, retarded America First people, and then there's also the DSA. So there's two monsters coming at, I'm guessing from the same side, honestly.
There's three. There's the DSA, the woke right, as well as the Democratic Party.
Yes, itself. Exactly.
Oh, and then you have the rhinos as well. We're going to get into the rhinos because they recently lost one of those elections, and the MAGA party is almost officially have taken over what was the Republicans.
John B. Hello says, Rosemary Barton needs to lose 500 pounds. Says Rosemary eats goldfish for fun. Rosemary Red Palms can't get into things too much.
I think she's been eating all the BS Mark Carney is selling her.
I mean, Ozempic is available at this point. I disagree with it, but in her case, I'm sure she has some of the preconditions. John B. says Rosemary Red Palms can't get into things too much. She doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag that the City of London financial cartel owns Canada.
Absolutely. And Promethean Action has been doing some great analysis exactly how the globalists are weaponizing Canada. These aren't just midterms coming up. This is the final act of the globalist versus MAGA, or the rebirth of America and the Hamiltonian economic system here.
And they're also scared because even though it doesn't get talked about much or called out much by the retarded right or the DSA or any of the other ones that are trying to go against the current administration and the plans moving forward, again, read the National Security Strategy document that came out in November, and you'll learn and you'll figure out what they're trying to do. But a lot of them don't mention the fact that within the rest of the continent and most of the other countries within the continent, they're getting in line with this new plan and with this new Western Hemisphere strategy that this administration is trying to devise. Because the politics get so insulated within the US and insulated within Canada, nobody almost ever mentions the fact that there's many other countries now that are aligning further and further with the US and this new plan that they're trying to solidify.
And it's absolutely fantastic what's been going on. Trump was frozen out by the judiciary in his first term, but he had 4 years to game plan it, and his team had 4 years to game plan it. Their guns ablazing every single day here. But it's crucially important that we follow this up with a J.D. Vance and a Marco Rubio, one or the other, hopefully both, because we need somebody that's an insider from that administration that knows these long-term game plans. This will completely stomp out the City of London, the globalists, and everybody else that needs to happen. Their game plan right now is to wait Trump out, and that will be successful if we don't follow this up. If the Democrats get in, it's going to be a real problem. They're going to try to make up for lost time, much like Biden tried to make up for lost time by opening the borders with 30 million illegal immigrants.
Steve Zavarro says further, even conservative content creators don't even understand the problem and the simple solution, both like it's 2024 and Trump is on the ticket because he is, or the furtherance of his plan is. Yes.
Well, sometimes you do have a good leader. I understand the amount of corruption in politics. Once in a while, once in a generation, maybe not even once in a generation, once in every 50 or 100 years, you get a good leader. Trump is that good leader. I think a lot of Americans do recognize that. Content creators online, especially in the independent media space, are starting to take bribes and get paid off here. And I think it's coming from the Democrats. The Democrats are asking themselves, why did they lose that last election? And they're saying, well, the independent media space, they spent a lot of money trying to get liberal content creators in there, and they're absolutely failing. So they're like, I guess we'll just pay off some of these conservative content creators and turn them woke right.
But I'd say it's not just the Democrats. It's also probably influences from places like the Middle East or China even.
Well, the Democrats are influenced by China, and most of the money that comes into the Democrats at this point is from China, and we're going to have a few articles on that later.
Neville Roy Singham or Roy Neville Singham or whatever his name is. John B says, Danny's always wrecked now. I used to like Danny, but not anymore. And again, I do think that this strategy that she used of going against what every single other premier was saying, putting their elbows up and saying, we're cutting off the oil, like it's theirs, it's Alberta's mostly, might be to try to now reverse course and say, no, I don't agree with this because I don't want people to vote for independence.
Well, it's not even about independence at this point. She's going to say anything to save her own hide. After that independence non-binding referendum on October 19th, she's up for a leadership review, and she thinks if she says these honest things that we actually agree with, that we're not going to have a leadership review on her. Absolutely not. We know the only road to a binding referendum is to get her out and get a Keith Wilson or somebody that will guarantee a binding referendum. We don't want to have to make a unilateral declaration of independence, but that will be a last resort if she tries to extend this thing out and not give us a binding referendum.
Steve Zavarro says, the strategy of destroying each economy so the provinces force bailouts in return for federalization is genius, scary. And we've said it multiple times, Mark Carney is not stupid. He's scary, he's a danger and a threat to not just Canada, but maybe the entire plan for the Western Hemisphere. But he's not stupid.
Well, I was the first one to call that out, and I'm a conservative that called it out. But eventually, a lot of people are talking about it online now, exactly what I said would happen. But it's liberal circles that are talking about it, saying the only way we can decouple from America is if we give bailouts to provinces for federalization. They're literally talking about the plan that I was talking about 6 months to a year ago.
Steve Zavarro says, and I agree with this, says, everyone that goes on Ozempic turns nuts. Jelly Roll, JP Pritzker, Kevin Feige from Marvel Studios, and many. Have you seen the women in Hollywood right now? I'm planning on starting a new segment I don't know the name of it yet, but of edited videos where I talk more about pop culture. And believe me, I'm going to talk about that. But yes, I mean, I think a lot of the insanity we're seeing right now as well is because of all of these not fully tested, substances that people are putting inside themselves, and then we're figuring it out as we go.
And let's do a couple more comments, and then let's get into the next section here.
Okay. 1 second. Where were we? Because those were the member comments, but let me go to the rest. Holden, you got me to say your full name yesterday. If you missed it, I said it, the full name. But Holden says, Trump has the Canadian people screaming, crying, stomping their feet, foaming at the mouth, and clawing their eyes out. I'm so here for it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm absolutely loving it. And the fact that I run an Alberta Independence channel, that we talk about the downfall of Canada, and we talk to Americans as well. These are my three favorite subjects right now. It's absolutely fantastic to not only do this show, but the Alberta Independence show and the downfall of Canada.
And Holden says, everyone I work with is losing their minds. It's effing hilarious. Oh, you should see X and Twitter. And some of the emails and comments we get as well.
Well, a lot of the liberals that are really politically engaged, if you watch them online from Canada, they're actually talking about abandoning Canada right now. They wanted elbows up. They wanted this trade war, but they don't think Canada can win it. And they're talking about moving to the United States. And these are people that absolutely hate the orange man.
Mm-hmm. Philip Vespa says, what's funny is that the DSA has a much higher presence in rural areas than what people think. They're far more aggressive and don't mind using violence on innocent Americans.
Yeah, I don't know how much truth there is to that. I think the cities is where they are really at. I mean, even in Canada, your Black Bloc, Antifa, stuff like that are big in the cities.
Option Trader also says, President Trump is absolutely the best master troll ever. Dude is unbeaten, and it's hysterically amusing. And the fact that a lot of these people, the politicians and other people that lead countries, don't understand that it's done on purpose and that it has a purpose, and it is to rile them up because it goes against what they've been taught and what's diplomatic and the way that things should be done. That's the genius of it, that it goes against all of that, which is what attracts people as well. And lastly, Option Trader says, Canadian TV isn't familiar with politicians who push back and expose their lies to their faces because they don't do it. They can't handle American politicians but want to fight us. Don't make me laugh. It's pure comedy. And it just further shows how bought and paid for the media in Canada is if they can't handle a little bit of pushback, and vice versa. And really quickly, Philip Vespa says, I believe Mr. Greer had to explain basic business acumen to Rosemary like a child because she is one.
Absolutely.
Big child.
And he had a million other things he could have gone into. She is actually lucky she didn't push back, and I think she wanted to.
But now let's get into the next segment, which is J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and the Republicans, because we've seen a lot of polls coming out. We've seen a lot of talk from even independent content creators within the U.S. saying that the Republicans are not going to do so great on the midterms, that the thing that's happening in Iran and a lot of other things might actually be worse for the Republicans. However, the Democrats seem to really be in a hole at the moment.
I am your voice.
And let's start with this from...
Well, before we get into this, I will say the midterms are shaping up to be an absolute nightmare for the Democratic Party. And we're going to get into this first story. And I think there's a lot more behind this than people actually realize.
Start with this from RNC Research saying, quote, CBS in Texas saying this is the first time Republicans are hosting a midterm convention, and they expect to fill up the AAC with more than 20,000 attendees, making it the largest convention since 2016. The RNC will, for the first time, open up tickets to the public.
This is going to be absolutely massive, and the Democrats have no response because they're broke. They don't have any money. They can't do one of these conventions. If they would have thought about it, even if they wanted to do it, they can't at this point.
This is the first time Republicans are hosting a midterm convention, and they expect to fill up the AAC with more than 20,000 attendees, making it the largest convention since 2016. RNC spokesman Zach Kraft says while most of the tickets for the convention will go to state parties, the RNC will for the first time open up tickets to the public through a lottery, and those winners of the lottery will get to sit on the front row. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to give the keynote address on night one. President Donald Trump will speak night two, focusing on immigration, taxes, the economy, and education. This is the first time Republicans...
And this is the first time they've ever had a midterm convention like this. This was a fantastic idea. And I think this is going to kick off the big money spending after this. You're going to see an entire media blitz. It's going to be absolutely chaos from the Republicans. They have almost $1 billion in their coffers if they want to spend it between the RNC, between Donald Trump, between Elon Musk. The Democratic Party has George Soros and a couple other big donors, but a lot of those big donors can't get their money into the United States right now because they live in China, and that's throwing up a lot of red flags about foreign interference.
And while one of the tactics that Canada and Mark Carney might have tried to use by walking away from the whole thing with the trade deal and not going into formal negotiations might have been to try to hurt the Republicans during the midterms, they're actually using it to their favor and using it as a way to rile up and rally a lot of the workers that had been affected by the onerous tariffs that Canada was placing upon a lot of their industries and that they might have not even known about. But also, they are using the fact that the Democrats and the DSA are getting closer and closer and more popular to their own advantage too. So right now, they have a lot of the good talking points to rally up Americans for what they actually believe.
Well, and they're going to say, well, what's a convention going to do for them? A convention does a ton. It's going to get a ton of mainstream media exposure, but then they're going to follow it up with $500 million to $1 billion. And you're going to get stuff like this coming directly out of that convention. And then all the other things that are going to come after that in that media blitz.
JD Vance says, my friends, I ask you to stand on your own conscience. And again, using a lot of the talking points that right now they have available to them.
It is great to be home. It is great to be back in Middletown, Ohio, and it is great to be with the greatest group of American patriots anywhere in the world. My papaw was a welder in this place for 40 years, and today his grandson stands here as the Vice President of these United States. It's an amazing thing. Democrats know who they stand for. It's anyone but you. You know who the Trump administration puts first? Americans. You, my friends, that's who we fight for. In just 18 months, we have seen an explosion of rebuilding in the American heartland. Do we believe in the United States of America? Do we believe in the hardworking men and women who built this great nation? Do we demand that our government serve us and our children rather than fraudsters and criminals? Do we demand that the American president fight for the American people first? My friends, I ask you to stand on your own conscience. Get out there and fight for yourself by telling the far-left radicals who have taken over the Democratic Party, this is not your country, it's our country, and we're going to fight for it. God bless you, and thank you for having me.
Man, and that absolutely hits. And we showed that the other day, but it didn't have the same editing and had the music in the background. Man, you're going to get a hit from the initial speeches, and then they're going to be putting things like that out, and they are going to run the gamut. The only thing the Democrats are trying to do in response, because they want to hit those northern states, they're trying to weaponize Canada right now.
Mm-hmm. And Canada tried to weaponize itself against the U.S., but again, I don't think it's going to work out as they think it will. And also, surprisingly, for a lot of even the content creators that used to be MAGA but now are fully against Trump, well, they might be almost alone by themselves on the hatred. Ozzy says, quote, CNN saying that Trump is by far the most admired president among Republicans, including Reagan and Lincoln, funnily enough.
Well, without a doubt, he is the most hated president amongst Democrats, but people don't understand how much support he has in the Republican Party. This woke right BS, nobody's buying it in the Republican Party, and you can see it by these poll numbers. This was shocking to even me at this point.
The president Republicans most admire, it's Donald Trump. This is a historic comparison. A majority of Republicans say, 53% say, he's the Republican president they most admire. Ronald Reagan, who traditionally has won that much, Donald Trump nearly triples up on this. Reagan at just 18%. And then Abraham Lincoln, who by most historic accounts is the greatest president of all time. But Republicans say that the president that they most admire by, what is this? This is 6-7 times as many, Donald John Trump at 53%, easily crushing Abe Lincoln at 8%. And the Elon poll showed that he was the greatest president as well, Donald Trump.
Like this.
Well, and what does that say to you? That says people are going to come out to the polls to support the candidates that support Trump, because we want the House and the Senate. We don't want to just rule through executive order. We want to put this stuff into legislation. And another interesting fact in there, a lot of people don't know Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Exactly, because the Democrats essentially appropriated him, and a lot of people forget that the Republicans were on the side against slavery, but that is never brought up anymore.
Well, one other thing I kind of want to say here is the Republicans have a huge bench that is extremely deep. The Democrats just don't have that. You have Elon Musk, RFK, JD Vance, Marco Rubio. I mean, I can go on and on all day. Tulsi Gabbard. there's no end to the list of Republicans right now. But Democrats, you only have a couple, and let's get into that.
No, but I also, before we go into that, I did want to show the clip that was under that, because this is another talking point that a lot of people, even within the former MAGA, I will call them, or the retarded right, always bring up that, oh, if Trump endorses a candidate, he does terribly. Well, the data shows that's not in fact the case at all. CNN saying that Trump still runs the Republican Party, and these are the Trump Senate primary endorsement win percentages.
One Senate primaries.
You can keep going.
If the person that he endorsed is not an elected incumbent, like Darlene Graham was, since 2022 or 2022 was about 95% of the time, has that weakened it all this cycle? No, it has not. It has actually gotten stronger. Look at this. 100% of the time, if Trump endorsed a non-elected incumbent like Darlene Graham, they in fact won the Republican primary for United States Senate. Trump's name is still the one that GOP voters buy when it comes to Senate endorsements.
And why is this happening? Because MAGA is hyped to the fact we need to get rid of those rhinos. We have been clearing them out. We need people that are going to vote things like the SAVE Act in without question so we can clean up elections and we can stop ruling through executive order. When Trump endorses a candidate, people get behind it. It is a major endorsement. He endorses people with zero experience and they win. They win by a lot, even though the polls and the woke right totally went against those candidates.
Exactly. But we're also seeing, and again, you and I don't trust that much in polls. We do think they're kind of used to manipulate a little bit the public sentiment and to actually enact what they're saying, what will happen in the polls. Doesn't always work. Again, Trump has won twice, even though they thought he was never going to win. But Eric Doherty says, quote, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio lead AOC in the 2028 national popular vote for president, according to Emerson. These would both be electoral college victories. So.
Yeah, and it says J.D. Vance 46%, AOC 44%, Rubio 48%, AOC 43%. This is actually extremely concerning. I was surprised and shocked AOC had that much support.
Well, she's the only one they have currently at this point.
Yeah, but another thing here is it's obvious that it should be a J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio ticket. With AOC, it's just one name on the ticket. If they put it there, who else are they going to put her with? They have to put her with a big name. They can't put her with a no name like you typically do for a vice presidential candidate. So it has to be a Gavin Newsom AOC. It has to be a Bernie Sanders AOC. Those are the three main candidates right now. And two of those three candidates are DSA members, Democratic Socialists of America.
Do you want me to play the clip or no?
You can play a little bit. It's only 17 seconds.
It's just them standing there.
Well, and you can see everybody there. Trump, J.D. Vance. I mean, Musk isn't there, and a lot of the heavy hitters from the Republicans aren't there, but their bench goes deep, and their ability to fundraise goes deep.
But next, Joe Land says, quote, timing's everything. Remember what happened yesterday? AG Blanche announced that they had seized, quote unquote, the servers and domains of a major Chinese hacker group that was interfering with major infrastructure involving national security.
Yeah, and I'm going to get you to read most of this. This is crucially important. Trump is going directly after elections. He wants to clean these things up. They know the mechanisms. He knows them because he's looked into them after he lost that 2020 election. And now we're going to see the fruits of this labor. Let's go into this. Everything from election machines to going after mail-in ballots. The Supreme Court gave him a huge win the other day as well.
Then the DHS announces this today, saying the Homeland Security Department will require random audits of paper ballots in the midterm elections, citing long simmering concern that the nation's largest voting technology companies use Chinese parts in their voting machines, according to a letter from Secretary Mark-Wayne Mullen released on Thursday. Mullen said the letter to the White House sent a letter to the White House Transparency Task Force earlier this week outlining the dangers posed by Chinese components in American voting machines and the way that these components could be exploited by hackers or other malicious actors, or might be there on purpose. I would even say Chinese components in voting machines can be exploited by Chinese quote-unquote hackers. Are you seeing the table being set? The evidence is being declassified and laid out before the American people, proving...
And just pause there for a second. So what's basically happening here, this is the second level. They already got the ruling from the Supreme Court where they're going to be able to limit mail-in ballots. They were literally having mail-in ballots with a hole on the back so they can see which box was ticked in some states like California. But this is the second phase. Any voting machine, which is I'm going to consider probably all of them with Chinese components, they can go in and audit those elections after, which is absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm. proving that their entire election system is already compromised. It's a, quote, national security issue, and Trump is already making the case to the American people, leading right up to the moment where they prove the 2020 election was stolen and Trump declares a national emergency, a declaration that will require all the safeguards for our elections that Trump has been talking about since his first term. The groundwork is being laid, and the people are prepared for
and you
coming.
can leave it there. And when they're talking about a national emergency, this has already been said by the Supreme Court that Trump can actually initiate this, especially with the excuse what happened with the Biden administration when they let in 11 to 30 million illegal immigrants. They don't even have a firm number at this point, but there is no voter ID in a lot of these states. So a lot of these states do need to be cleaned up.
Mm-hmm. We also have Glenn Beck explaining the situation surrounding all of this with Rapid Response 47 saying, quote, Glenn Beck saying it's easy to forget where we were just 2 years ago. So let me recap what has happened just this week. I believe it's a clip. So do you want me to just play the clip?
Yeah.
It's easy to forget where we were just 2 years ago. So before we get to the president, let me just recap what has happened this week. Monday, Supreme Court cleared the way for the president's mail-in ballot order to take effect before the midterms 6-3. Homeland Security can build a federal citizenship list and send it to the states, while the Attorney General can prioritize the prosecutions of officials who give ballots to ineligible voters. Also, the State Department. The State Department is moving to revoke the tourist and business visas of up to 200,000 people who came as visitors and then filed for asylum, the largest action in American history.
And you can leave it there. We're going to play the rest of that in the next segment, actually.
Okay. But what's crazy is that it should be fully clear and transparent that the people that don't want election integrity, that want to go against things like voter ID and the SAVE Act, and that are angry at the fact that they want to fully verify and check election voting machines, or that there might not be any hacking possible because of, for example, Chinese components, that should tell you all you need to know about the integrity of those candidates, of those people running for office that want to run the US or a state or even a district, and the fact that they're not for transparency, not for integrity. Well,
that's it.
Okay. Before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out. And like the video. Thank you so much. You tripped me up there. So should I leave that clip on there?
Yeah, it's for the next segment, actually.
Oh, okay. Apologies. Well, let's go back to your comments because I see there's a lot, so thank you so much. Where were we? Hold on. John B says, good call, guy. Yeah, Clowney is dangerous. Again, the people that say he's stupid, I don't think he's stupid.
No, he's absolutely not stupid. He's going to use this with the Americans and this foreign interference to either try to influence these by-elections in Canada, which I think it will probably be successful. It would also have he's already having an impact in the Quebec independence movement. They're delaying it until after Trump is office. I think that's a betrayal of the PQ to the people. On top of that, what if he actually doesn't go back and negotiate? This could have an impact on the midterms. Not a big impact, but even a small impact is some kind of impact. And long term here, you have to figure maybe he's going towards the federalization of Canada and the economic collapse in the process.
Holden says, look inside yourself as a deer in the headlights. The entire interview with Greer. I believe Rosemary Barton, you mean? Yes. And Ms. Altoad says, hey, when you're right, and Smith is right. Well, in this case, she's right in calling out the retardation that it is to try to cut off oil and energy from the U.S. because it affects Canada even more than it would affect the U.S. And it just proves the point that that's what they were trying to do. Beulah Hillier, hello, says watching from Innisfail, Alberta. Thank you so much. And Option Trader says the oil companies have been all over Venezuela getting their oil infrastructure back online, which is another thing that doesn't get talked about much at all, even within U.S. media, but much less within Canadian media, because it would make all their threats and all the points that they always try to bring up essentially moot.
Well, over on RUMBLE today, when we do go over there, I got that Venezuela story, and I think it's a 50% increase they're going to start importing from Venezuela, if I remember the story correctly. It literally just popped up right before we went on the air. This means Canada has absolutely no leverage. It could be the opposite. Those pipelines that flow from Alberta down south could be reversed, and they could use Venezuelan oil and pump it up to the other states.
Philip Vespa says, you guys called it on Daniel moving the goalposts for the binding referendum. Fringe, the unacceptable Fringe, analyzed her press conference and explicitly called out the flip-flop. Make sure you take full credit. Well, the guy, mostly.
Yeah, and I constantly beat the drum of federalization, calling out Danielle Smith. I just want what's best for Alberta, and ultimately I want what's best for Canada. And what's best for Canada is not Mark Carney, not communism, and not federalization, period. And I want what's best for the United States as well. And the United States is in a very good position because they have Donald Trump, and they have such a deep bench of people that can take over after Donald Trump.
And hold on. Holden says, I believe that in the end, Danny will cave to Carl. She knows her career as leader is done. I hope I'm wrong. Well, I think she's eyeing a better chance and a better position within Ottawa and maybe as the leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, they're testing her out with what's going on in Alberta independence, and they want her for Ottawa. I believe after Carney, they're going to place Danielle Smith in there.
And Holden says Danny knows she is the only viable replacement for Pierre, Kenny, and Ford are utter buffoons.
Well, and that's why she's taking these other stances as well. So when Carney destroys the country, gives the bailouts, does the federalization, builds the mechanisms, he might not be able to finish it. They'll install Danny, and she'll finish the federalization, which will be easy because all the mechanisms will already be built through legislation and Mark Carney.
Mm-hmm. Philip Vespa says, Plamondon really shot himself in the foot by delaying his referendum. The PQ or Parti Québécois is losing a lot of momentum.
Yeah, I'm all fed up with that guy at this point, and it is a shame. I think he's paid off, bought and paid for. I used to really like him. We used to pump him a lot on this channel because it was an independence movement, but that just proves why you don't go through a leader for independence. This is a citizen-led movement, and when Alberta Independence sees all the politicians, conservatives, independents, NDP, Liberals all lined up against us, that means we made the right decision. The PQ is just another politician, and this is why Quebec will never get independence.
And also over in RUMBLE, thank you. Hold on. Thank you so much for Independent Alberta for gifting 1 subscription and for Real French for gifting 2.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. And whoever got them, please say thank you to them as well. And Philip Vespa says, I'm just warning you to the press, since many young Americans from rural areas are radicalized at university and bring their beliefs back home because they were saying that in rural areas in the U.S., it's all Republican and they're all not so much so. And especially if the young kids do go to universities or do go to the cities to find better jobs. Not always.
Yeah, and I will say there is at least a de-radicalization mechanism within the rural areas, which is families, sometimes church, although that is more and more unpopular with the younger generations. But also a lot of people in rural areas very often get married where people in cities just do not. Mm-hmm. And children and marriage eventually bring people around to conservatism.
Option Trader says the DNC had to put up the headquarters building as collateral for a loan because they have zero money and they owe $18 million. They can't spend money on campaigns. We've been saying exactly.
Well, they're trying to smuggle money into the country. They're trying to launder it. Usually it would be USAID would be the mechanism they would use. Now they're trying to use Ukraine and other things. They got the banker Mark Carney. I think they're going to move a lot of money through Canada because Trump's watching right now and he knows, and so does Bessent. Bessent used to work for George Soros. He knows the mechanisms they normally use to launder money into the United States, especially for midterm and election campaigns.
Southern Gem Phil says, Trump's policies are great. He tells it like it is.
Absolutely.
Like America. Option Trader says, AOC support isn't real support. It's just TDS. Also, polls are useless. And I agree with that as well. And Option Trader says, Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe both independently filmed video of illegal aliens voting in Minnesota and getting ballots just by vouching for illegal aliens. Yeah, we showed some of them.
Yeah, and they passed the Nick Shirley law recently in California where you're not even allowed to report on this stuff anymore. I mean, Gavin Newsom is completely corrupt, and I really think Gavin Newsom, AOC are looking like the main candidates. I personally think it's going to be a Bernie Sanders will sneak in there because he is the leader of the DSA, and this will be his last shot. He is getting older now.
And QC Frag, I'm guessing you're a troll, says, LOL is the best for USA Trump. USA speaking for Canada. Dang, you sure know how to find Canada on the map then. Handle your own country. Unity, not divide. Well, we're in Mexico, number one, first of all.
Yeah, we've already fled Canada. We voted for our own independence. We now live in actually Mexico. I used to live in Canada. I also used to live in the United States. I was born in Canada, but I talk about American politics because they affect the world. And especially when you have a president like Donald Trump in there, that he's absolutely crushing the globalists right now. And that's why the liberals hate him, because the liberals are the globalists. They're the ones that are bringing these policies in. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Let's erase your own history, erase your own culture, and bring guilt and shame along with mass immigration.
And I'm from Mexico, lived 13 years in Canada, a little bit in the US as well. So, I think anybody should be able to give their opinion on anything they want.
Absolutely.
That's why free speech is so important. And Philip Espa says, Carney wants you to have to lease your home like in China. He wants the state in every aspect of your life. I fear that he will tie his digital ID to employment. Social credit is coming to Canada. And we have already talked about plans like that as well.
And again, with the American Greatness Show, we have 6 segments, so it's a really long show. You read a few more comments, and then let's get into the next section there.
Yes, we only just have a few more. But yes, exactly, Philip Espa. But Option Trader says, that's not the issue. You think it is. Rural America is small, and small towns are diehard conservative. The DSA has abandoned the middle and the south and small towns. They focus where they can leverage the coasts and big cities.
Yeah, and it's easier to get propaganda out, and they understand that the cities are just much more dense, so it's easier to propagandize them.
And just because I'm a little confused, what's the next segment about? That's why I was trying to delay, because I don't know what
TPUSA and the midterms.
I know, but what are we talking about?
Save...
That's why I was asking.
Save America from Lake... Is it the Lake America one?
No, that's below it. That's why I'm like, what are we talking about? I mean, we played a clip that we shouldn't have on the last segment. That was for this segment, but I'm trying to figure out what to tell you guys.
Oh, it's going to be, it's talking about the midterms here. And Gavin Newsom as well.
Okay. Let me see if I can do this. A little behind the scenes.
Oh, hold on. I took out the Gavin Newsom clip. So it's just basically about the midterms and TP. Yeah,
But we just talked about the midterms.
Yeah, that's fine.
More about the midterms. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to introduce it. That's the thing. I know. Hold on. This is what happens when you don't fully plan things. Okay. Let me try to fix it. As you know, we're trying to cut clips, so this is why the show is a little bit different, but we're still reading your comments, and we still really appreciate you for being here, but let's try to do this. As the midterms get closer, we do see people, mostly in the Democrat and DSA side, Democratic Socialists of America, saying that it's a bad idea to have things like voter ID, to have things like elections that are non-interferable with, elections that are transparent, and probably because it just benefits them.
I'm done, I'm pissed, and I'm not putting up with it anymore.
Let's start with this from Glenn Beck via Rapid Response 47 saying, quote, it's easy to forget where we were just 2 years ago, so let me recap what happened just this week. And it's a video from Glenn Beck kind of highlighting.
Let's kind of get into this because a lot of people are thinking, oh, they're going to vote Democrat maybe in 2028 or something like that. Let's not forget what happened from Joe Biden. And not only what happened with Joe Biden, but what's happening across the rest of the West, whether it's Britain, the EU, Australia. You have the best example right to your north being Canada. Free speech is disappearing. Private property is disappearing. Mass immigration is destroying these countries. They're erasing their own history. They're getting rid of fathers and replacing them with governments. I mean, I can go on and on all day, but let's let Glenn Beck do it here.
It's easy to forget where we were just 2 years ago. So before we get to the president, let me just recap what has happened this week. Monday, Supreme Court cleared the way for the president's mail-in ballot order to take effect before the midterms 6-3. Homeland Security can build a federal citizenship list and send it to the states, while the Attorney General can prioritize the prosecutions of officials who give ballots to ineligible voters. Also, the State Department. The State Department is moving to revoke the tourist and business visas of up to 200,000 people who came as visitors and then filed for asylum, the largest action in American history. In 14 days this month, in 14 days, ICE arrested almost 1,500 people in Virginia and Maryland alone, including 400 with convictions and pending charges.
And pause it for a minute. And if you listen to the woke right, like a lot of conservatives do, they kind of got sucked down that rabbit hole. I almost got sucked down that rabbit hole, but I woke up and realized before it was too late, they're going to tell you the exact opposite of what's happening here. They're going to tell you lies. He is, and we're going to go through it, he is cleaning up the elections. He is getting rid of mass immigrants that came into the country illegally under Joe Biden, not just with ICE, but offering them $2,500 at an airport if they self-deport. And that program has been extremely successful. Over 2 million illegal immigrants have self-deported at this point.
Crimes from sexual battery, kidnapping, robbery, attempted murder, rape, MS-13 members. One of the most successful operations ever. Also, this week we find out State Department is moving to revoke the tourist and business visas of up to 200,000 people who came as visitors. Let's see. Meanwhile, we find out ICE arrests surged nearly 50,000 in July, highest monthly total. Homeland Security also proposed a $103,000 fee on capped H-1B visa petitions. And then the economic news. This one's huge. Philadelphia Fed's manufacturing survey showed American factories having the strongest current conditions in more than 5 years. But more striking, the manufacturers, their expectations for the future surged to the highest level since the beginning of the Reagan boom in 1983, with the biggest one jump ever recorded. In other words, American manufacturing isn't surviving. It may be on the verge of a major... We're going to build things in America again.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And $19 trillion coming in, a lot of that for manufacturing and building these facilities. It's absolutely crucial. We follow Trump up with a J.D. Vance or a Marco Rubio. Why? Because they're going to get a ton of credit for this economy. You're going to see the fruits of this labor within the next administration. We want to make sure that next administration aren't the Democrats. Otherwise, they're going to claim credit for everything Trump did.
And recently we also saw this from Fox News saying, quote, Darlene Graham wins the South Carolina Senate runoff, advancing in the race to fill the seat held by her late brother, Senator Lindsey Graham, saying that she has vowed to continue her brother's work and saying she's got to step in and carry his legacy.
This is absolutely massive. We're talking about the midterms here, and Trump endorsed her. The woke right, the DSA, as well as the rhinos and the Democrats. And the rhinos are Republicans in name only. We're clearing them out. We're replacing them with MAGA candidates. She had absolutely zero experience. She was the sister of Lindsey Graham. Trump needed a loyalist so he can get a lot of these things passed, like the SAVE Act, which is crucially important. The fact that the Republicans, or the rhinos in name only, Republicans in name only, are sabotaging him left and right. We need candidates like this in. And when Trump gives his endorsement, it's massive. She was predicted to lose, and she won by 6 points. This shows the popularity of Trump and his endorsements.
She just called, the Associated Press just called the race. You may have heard the cheers that erupted in the room just a few seconds after 9 p.m. Darlene Graham by the Associated Press declared the winner in this primary runoff against Congressman Ralph Norman. This race closely watched, and it was close as the pundits were suggesting it was going to be. I spoke to Darlene Graham's staff just as the polls were closing, and they told me that they expected this to be quite close. She just called the Associated Press.
And the woke right put everything they had into the other candidate. And the other candidate was a swamp thing, and they didn't want her there in any way, shape, or form. They were taking people that were endorsing Nikki Haley. That should tell you everything you need to know.
And we also saw and talked about this, but further, Nick Sorter says, quote, it's official, activist Obama judge Indira Talwani has reluctantly lifted her injunction that blocked President Trump's mail-in ballot restriction order from going into effect, saying that USPS can now only mail ballots to legal voters verified by DHS and SSA. That should just be common sense. But okay.
Well, and this is absolutely fantastic. That Supreme Court ruling just came down the other day, and now we're seeing it in action here. And Trump's following this up with a lot of other executive orders, and they're going to be overseeing these elections, making sure there isn't foreign interference, making sure these ballots are legal. Now, is there still going to be some corruption? Yes, but not at the level we've seen in 2020.
Take some time, and I'll make the signature absolutely perfect. So it looks very good.
And we can go to the next clip if you want there.
Sure. Hold on. Oh, this is just
and yeah, this was absolutely fantastic. And even though this is AI and a meme, I think there is so much truth to what they're saying here.
So the United Spot says the SAVE Act showdown.
Well, and this is the Democrat perspective versus the Republican perspective, or just a sane individual's perspective that's non-politically engaged.
You finally came.
You wanted to see me.
I wanted to give you one last chance to understand.
Understand what?
That elections belong to the people.
American people?
Eligible voters.
American citizens?
You're obsessed with that word.
It's a pretty important word when we're talking about American elections.
The SAVE Act is unnecessary.
Why?
Because we already have safeguards.
Then verifying citizenship shouldn't be a problem.
It creates barriers.
For American citizens?
For eligible voters.
You keep changing the subject.
I'm protecting democracy.
So am I.
By making people prove who they are?
Yes.
That's dangerous.
What's dangerous about knowing who's voting?
You're trying to control elections.
No. I'm trying to control who controls elections.
California doesn't need Washington telling us how to run our elections.
Then California should have no problem proving that the people voting in federal elections are American citizens.
That's not the point.
Then tell me the point.
The point is access.
Access for citizens.
Access for everyone who is eligible.
And eligible means what?
Eligible.
That's not an answer.
You're trying to scare people.
No. I'm asking a very simple question.
Who gets to vote in an American election? American voters. And what makes them American voters? They are registered. And what makes them eligible to register? You're twisting everything. I'm not twisting anything. I'm asking you to define the word citizen. You know exactly what I mean. I do. That's why we're having this conversation.
And absolutely fantastic. And that's how Gavin Newsom's going to try to run a campaign if he ends up being the candidate. He speaks out both the sides of his mouth. He never says what he really means. And this is why I have nothing but respect for Trump, because he speaks frankly, he speaks honestly, and he speaks very, very directly to the American people. And the Democrats absolutely hate it.
But it's also insane that in the US, they're still having this conversation while all around the globe, verifying if someone's a citizen that's voting is just common sense. Having voter ID is normal for most of the, not even just developed, most of the world does this. And the fact that it's so transparent that they want to use these mechanisms and have been using these mechanisms for who knows how long to interfere with elections and to continue to hold on to power, and that people don't see it that way still, and they still want to defend these moronic ideas is crazy to me.
Well, these midterms are going to be a test run because Trump has gone after voting machines with Chinese parts. So he's going to be able to go after voting machines. Then he went after mail-in balloting, and then he got the Supreme Court to back him up on this. And then he's completely shut down the border for illegal immigration. So yeah, there's already illegal immigrants into the country. So in states there is no voter ID, it's going to be hard to kind of weed them out. But for the most part, man, this is going to be a good test run for the 2028 election. And he's going to know where he needs to go stronger at for 2028 to clean this thing up.
Mm-hmm. Also, quick reminder, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out, and like the video. And now let me go back to reading all your comments.
And sorry about that. The titling got messed up there. Yes. And it was all based around the last clip with Newsom. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I titled that section, Save America from Gavin Newsom.
But it doesn't say that.
Yeah, it does, right at the top.
Oh, yes, but it made no sense to me. We're working out the kinks here, people. But thank you for still staying here and being here. Philip Espa says, to Option Trader, you know better than me than the Americans. I would just want rural areas to stay conservative. Yes?
Absolutely.
Option Trader says, YouTube is flooded with Democrats begging for money. USAID gets shut down and they can't raise funds anymore. Makes you wonder if the Democrats really had the support they claimed in 2024. I would say no.
It was all USAID money. I mean, that was the majority of it. They have a few other mechanisms they can still get money. I think the Ukraine war is one of them. That's why you're seeing massive amounts of money going over there right now. And then they're getting it out through military contracts within other countries. And I think a lot of that money is meant to come back to the Democrats in the United States. But compared to the Republicans right now, they have $1 billion war chest. They have big names that can fundraise. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, the RNC itself, TPUSA as well.
And John B says, I call him Grab and Gruesome.
And I used to live in California for a long time, and I follow Newsom just because I used to live there. I can't stand the guy. That being said, he's very dangerous because he can talk in long format, which a lot of Democratic candidates can't do.
Mm-hmm. And over in over in RUMBLE, Real French says, Doug Ford, that POS, he's so irrelevant. Well, he tries to make himself more and more relevant and ends up just with egg on his face.
Well, his relevancy, I think, is because he's the bad cop to Mark Carney's good cop for the Liberals within Canada anyway.
Real French says they all talk out of both sides of their mouths because it's what's convenient for them. And again, this is why we have been warning about Danielle Smith and the backtracks and flash forwards that she does all the time. She flip-flops too much. K4U says, see, that's Danielle Smith saying good things. Meanwhile, her digital ID lined up and data AI centers lined up to many conservatives, but many conservatives eat it up. That's how I had to say it. Hold on. Real French says, there's Danielle Smith saying good things. Meanwhile, getting her digital ID lined up. Yep. And Real French says, Alberta independence, let's go. Real French
we
says,
need somebody in Danielle Smith's spot that's just going to stir the frickin' pot and pour it all over the floor, meaning no more giving CPP payments to the government. We're going to keep that money in Alberta banks. We'll still allow it out to pay out pensions, but we want that money stored in Albertan banks because that will benefit the Albertan people. We want an Albertan sheriff. We want to stop giving remittance payments. Figure out how to do that. Even if you can't figure it out, make the federal government challenge you in court. This is going to be a real-time education on how much sovereignty you don't have in Alberta. But when you have somebody that's going to go along, get along, and be best friends to the federal government like Danielle Smith, it's real hard to point these things out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and this is interesting. My real friend asking how many Canadians had heard of Mark Carney before he became Prime Minister.
I don't know about Canadians, but a lot of people knew about him on a global level. He was behind the scenes, and he was part of the Trudeau administration. But he was handpicked by the globalists. All these other leaders were just puppets. They are starting to panic because of the pushback that Trump is putting on them right now. They had to put somebody competent up. They had to bring somebody out of the shadows. They didn't want to do that. This is a last resort.
And Kate for You says there was also the ex-prime minister from England that pleaded Canadians not to vote for him, for Mark Carney, before the election. She stated his net zero would end the economy.
Well,
and yet here we are.
And it resulted in an independence movement in Great Britain as well. They broke free from the EU. So hopefully the same thing happens in Alberta here.
And Independent Alberta, thank you for being here, says howdy, next shift reporting for duty. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for gifting that membership as well. And hold on. Okay.
And a couple more comments, then we'll go into the next section.
John B says Alberta needs to stop those equalization payments to Quebec. Exactly. Well, we don't have anymore. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Hold on. Okay. Let's see if I can do this next one. We see the fight, the tariff war that Canada has waged against the U.S., and now the U.S. is responding in a way that has gotten a lot of Canadians with their elbows even further up by renaming Lake Ontario Lake America.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Let's start with exactly this from Eric Doherty saying, quote, President Trump drops this absolute banger where by the stroke of a pen, he personally crosses out Lake Ontario in the Oval Office to rename it Lake America.
And we're going to start with this, and it started before this. It started with the tweet, but I thought we would start here because he actually renamed it now. There's a follow-up article after this one.
Saying we're going to make a little change. We're going to call it something different than Lake Ontario.
So this is Lake Ontario in Canada and in the United States. But we're going to make a little change. We're going to call it something different than Lake Ontario. We're going to call it Lake America. And all it takes is a good pen and some intelligence. So Lake Ontario, that's gone. Lake America. So now we have a lake, and now we have a Gulf, because we have the Gulf of America, and now we have Lake America.
And you can leave it there. And I thought that was AI at first, and I had to double and triple check it before I grabbed it. That being said, the reason he went from that to actually renaming the lake, which we're going to show in just a moment, is because it really got under everybody's skin in Canada. And this is how he plays politics.
Mm-hmm. And next order says, breaking, President Trump just signed an executive order changing the name of Lake Ontario to Lake America, sending Canadians into an absolute rage, saying all the paperwork's been filed and it's effective immediately.
Well, before we go into this one, I'll make one more comment about the last clip. And he said, oh, now we got a Gulf and now we have a lake. I think it's two different things there. When it comes to the Gulf of America, he is organizing the global economy right now, and he is putting America at the center of oil and natural gas distribution. And a lot of that has to do with the Gulf. And that's why he wants it called the Gulf of America. Even though some people are still going to call it the Gulf of Mexico, when it comes to different trade lines and things like that, they have to call it Gulf of America.
And finally, I guess the purpose of this more than anything else is we're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order. Do you have anything to say about it, Ben?
Yes, sir. So this is a straightforward but important executive order. It directs Secretary Burgum and the Department of the Interior to update the Geographic Names Information Service to reflect that the lake once known as Lake Ontario will, from this day forward, be known as Lake America. This is a lake that has most of its volume in the United States. The deepest parts of the lake sit in United States territory. So this will reflect that this is an American lake.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. you very much. And we filed all the necessary papers, documents, everything else. We notified all of the various people that we have to notify. So we've done everything that you have to do. And this is official, effective immediately.
And I apologize if that clip was a little bit hard to hear. That being said, yeah, he signed it now. It is official. Let's go into a little bit of the history, though.
But it's also good that he is good at trolling, but that's what makes him effective as well. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, that he does most of it on purpose, not because he's dumb, but because he knows the effects it's going to have.
Oh, absolutely. And this is going to drive the Canadians absolutely crazy. And if Mark Carney does come back begging for a deal after these by-elections in Canada, the Liberals are going to lose their minds over this now.
And it makes him look insane, which helps him as well. Glenn Beck says, quote, "It's time to teach Canada you can't do this anymore," on the whole lake thing.
It seems to me they had a really good deal, but this is all about the elections and throwing our elections. What is happening? Is there a way to end this?
Look, I don't know how you feel about Canada. They are one of the worst countries in the world to deal with. And this has gone on for many years.
Wait. Can we say this? I love Canadians and Canada.
Correct.
I do not like their administration.
Okay, well,
right?
the administration and the previous administration too was terrible.
Yes.
But they have taken advantage of the United States for many decades. Actually, they charge tariffs that are unbelievable, like on milk, 400%, and on and I just said we're taking them on, and I took them on at the beginning, but we had so many other things to do because the country was a mess. But I said we're going to take them on.
And you can pause it there for a moment.
I'm gone. I got removed. Apologies. I'll keep talking though. Continues. They say they've taken our car industry and taken our agricultural industry. You know, the farmers can't sell anything in there because the tariffs are so enormous, and yet they want to sell in the U.S. without any tariffs. And also, what doesn't get mentioned enough, I even think, is the fact that the U.S. and the military and everything else Canada depends on the U.S. for is almost never mentioned by the Canadians themselves because they don't want to admit that they can't really work or function even without the help of the U.S. Oh, I'm coming back online. Hello. And there we go. Oh. Okay. Should I continue the clip or start it again?
You can start it from here, and then we'll just clip it in there.
Okay.
And you saw the Lake Ontario. You know, people thought I was kidding. Maybe I wasn't, because the last one you saw was the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America.
I know.
So now we have a Gulf and we have a lake. Okay, you know, it's very simple. But look, I don't want to go into great detail because it's maybe boring to people. But to me, it's not boring. They charge tariffs. They take advantage
and
of
pause
us.
it just for a moment. And he's pointing out Canada has his attention now. And I think he understands the Democrats are running a midterm campaign in Canada. He sees the EU. He understands the component of Canada. And this could be bad news, especially if he pulls out of the USMCA and announces a bilateral trade deal with Mexico, which is very possible after the midterms. And even if the Canadians come back to the table, I don't think they're going to get a sweetheart of a deal he was offering the first time.
Though they were a state, and they're not a state. And they've taken our car industry, and they've taken our agriculture industry. Yeah. You know, the farmers can't sell anything in there because the tariffs are so enormous. And yet they want to sell in us without any tariffs. So I had a deal. That was a pretty good deal, you know, quite good, because they're afraid that I won't do any business. In other words, we won't trade. They don't have anything that we have to have. Okay, we can get by. I mean, there are a couple of things that would make it a little inconvenient, but we could get them elsewhere. And it's time to teach Canada you can't do this anymore.
Because they'll continue to.
And let's go into this last clip. It was very interesting, the actual history and how Lake Ontario got named. It wasn't the Canadians that named it.
Aaron Jordan says, quote, President Trump says the U.S. is considering changing Lake Ontario's name to Lake America, but can he actually do that? Plus, if you think the lake is named for the province, think again.
Well, he actually did do it, so.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that made headlines involving the trade war is President Trump's post on social media today saying the U.S. is seriously considering changing the name of Lake Ontario to Lake America. He added the U.S. doesn't expect to do much business with Ontario moving forward. If this sounds familiar, you'll remember he signed an executive order last year renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. And if you're wondering whether the president can rename Lake Ontario unilaterally, simply put, It's complicated. You see, he has a lot of power when it comes to how the U.S. recognizes places and also landmarks. The short answer is he can change the name for U.S. purposes, but he can't tell Canada or people on either side of the border what to call it, since it's an international waterway.
And you can leave it there. No, don't leave it there. We're going to keep playing it. But what I will say is he has a lot of leverage over American social media companies, American businesses. They're all going to be calling that thing like America from here on in.
Several agencies oversee. There's not one agency, not a single agency that picks the names of international bodies of water. And if you think Lake Ontario is named for the province, think again. The lake's name actually predates both countries. You see, it comes from the Huron Indigenous people's word meaning Lake of Shining Waters. In fact, the province of Ontario took its name from the lake when the province was founded in 1867.
Well, and it looks like Lake Ontario has some new pronouns or a new name here.
Luckily, and again, it's even funnier that he's renaming it given that history and given that probably that will be a big thing now that a lot of the Canadians will be complaining about as well. The fact that it was an Indigenous name and that it's supposed to be that name because it means X, Y, Z, and it was even precedes the province and the lake itself.
Well, even the lakes in Canada are in transition, I guess.
Exactly. Please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it really does help us out. And also like the video. Thank you so much. And let me go back to your comments, with John saying, how difficult would it be to start a Bank of Alberta only? Bank for Alberta only.
Well, you can put it the money in Alberta banks, the CPP and things like that, which would really keep the money inside of Alberta, which would help the Albertan economy. It doesn't have to be a purely Albertan bank. It just has to be based there. And there are already a lot of banks based in Alberta.
John B says, Trump as a troller rules, LMU. And I think it's way more effective than people want to give him even credit for, I would say.
Yeah.
Option Trader says, does Alberta have its own banks? I used RBC for years, my business accounts in Alberta.
Yeah, I actually knew about this because of the truckers' convoy. A lot of people were getting their bank accounts shut down and things like that. So they looked for independent banks in Alberta. And I guess there are a few. That's how I found out about them.
And Option Trader says, I love my president, the troller in chief. Holden says, Danny loves the transfer payments. I guess there's a never-ending fight with no intention of resolution. Philip Espa says, why can't we have each country refer to it by the name they want? I don't know if Mexicans call it the Gulf of America. No, I think here they still call it the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, most of the world still calls it the Gulf of Mexico, but for legal purposes, if you're shipping in and out, you're having to call it the Gulf of America on different kinds of paperwork. I think Google Maps within America now switched it to Gulf of America as well, because a lot of industry and social media companies and things like that are based out of America. They're actually going to name it to like America now.
Option Trader says, it doesn't really matter, but it's very amusing to watch the meltdowns over a lake.
Oh, absolutely.
And the fact that he can achieve that effect of meltdown.
Well, and I think he's also sending the message, you come back to the table now, you're going to have to make some sacrifices because the deal's not going to be as sweet anymore.
Mm-hmm. And hold on, because this crashed as well. Philip Espa says, I don't understand the meltdowns. Languages exist for that reason. Two different words to describe something. Doesn't matter if both understand what is being referenced. And Holden says, I'm in Hamilton. I can't wait to stop on my way to work tomorrow and stare out over Lake America with my hands on my hips and a smile on my face.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And Philip Espa says, Lake of Shining Waters? That is the most misleading name. Don't see Torontonians swimming in that shining water.
No, especially all the Indians taking shits on the shores now.
Poops. YouTube doesn't like that word. That's why I was trying to be careful with it. I'm trying to figure out what I'm saying for the next one as well.
That's about mass immigration there.
I know, but the guy changed the whole format that we use, and now it made it a lot harder for me to try to do my job. Okay, hold on.
Just read what I wrote there. It's fine.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, it does.
Problem. Hold on. Let me get this comment out. Okay. But what do you want me to say? I really don't understand.
Yeah, say something about mass immigration. You don't have to keep announcing it every time we get to the end of a section.
Well, no, I know, but because I ran out of
mass immigration, where did they all go?
Okay, fine. Let's try this again this time. In the U.S., there was a lot of talk about mass immigration, but at this point, a lot of people are asking, where did they all go?
Whatever they say, it's the opposite. They never tell the truth.
Oh, oops. And let's start with this from our Newful saying, quote, ICE just wrapped one of its biggest recent operations, 1,328 illegal aliens arrested in only 2 weeks. The ERO team hit Maryland and Virginia hard, sweeping up a mix of bad people, guys with ending life warrants, SA offenders, and straight up illegal
And
aliens.
I kind of put this in here just to show that he is making a difference. The woke right's going to tell you something completely opposite. That's not the case with boots on the ground. And on top of that, they have a self-deportation program at all airports where they pay you $2,500 to go back to your home country and give you a free plane ticket. Over 2 million illegal aliens have self-deported at this point.
Yeah, it's being called one of the largest enforcement operations in the agency's history. ICE saying they were quiet and successful. More than 1,300 undocumented immigrants were arrested across Virginia and Maryland in just 2 weeks. That operation being called Safe Community Washington, D.C., taking place from August 1st to August 14th. And we have video showing several incidents of the detainment from ICE agents also chasing after some of these detainees. According to the Department of Homeland
And
Security,
you can pause it just for a quick second here. And it took a while to get the hiring up to actually get boots on the ground here. And that self-deportation program that they had that was massively successful is only going to be more successful because it works hand in hand with this. The more pressure that is put on illegal immigrants, the more willing they are going to be to self-deport.
100 of those now in custody had criminal convictions or pending charges, including allegations involving murder, attempted murder, rape, and kidnapping. The others were detained for not having the proper documentation. Among those arrested include Igner Wilfredo Hueso Moran, an immigrant from El Salvador who DHS says had a murder warrant out of Richmond, Virginia. Action Pierre from Haiti, DHS says he had a criminal history, including attempted murder and 2 counts of assault. And Estrella Reyes Funes, born in Honduras, who has a felony hit-and-run conviction and arrest for alleged threats to bomb or burn and assault a family member. Now, again, ICE says these actions were carried out quietly and successfully.
And it's absolutely fantastic. They're kind of pointing out that they have criminal records as well, because you know the other side is going to try to frame this in a completely dishonest manner.
And unfortunately, now it's two sides. It's not just one side, but essentially 3 different sides that are fighting against what's actually helping the U.S. and that is making evident the fruits of labor that has been done. But next, insanely enough, Libs of TikTok says, quote, Democrat, well, not insane because this is expected essentially, but Democrat New York Governor Kathy Hochul just announced that her state's new law banning police from assisting ICE has gone into effect, while claiming that ICE is committing atrocities on our streets.
Well, and this is absolutely crazy. And this is what these blue states are going to do. They're going to try to build a blue wall. Why? Because they need these illegals for the midterms. For mail-in balloting, as well as a ton of other things. They don't have voter ID in California and a lot of these other things, so they use these illegal immigrants to vote.
She also threatens police with legal action if they continue working with ICE, and New York will just continue to go down the toilet.
And we will not sit idly by when ICE commits atrocities on our streets. We will not allow local cops to be diverted as ICE agents to conduct civil immigration enforcement. To keep crime down, as we have been doing, we need local police focused on thwarting local crimes. Local police, local crimes. Not conducting civil immigration enforcement, not chasing Stephen Miller's inane deportation quotas. And that's why this year I championed a new law, banning agreements between local law enforcement and ICE.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And again, they're not going to release any records. They're not going to give any kind of assistance. They don't need the actual street beat cops to assist them, but they do need access to a lot of these records. And the blue states just aren't going to do it. They won't side in the SAVE Act. They don't want to clean up elections. They don't want to get rid of illegal immigrants that came into their states in mass, because they know that helps them in the midterms as well as the 2028 elections, especially when they don't have voter ID.
And it fully makes their motives and intentions fully clear for anyone to see. But next, also, Laura Ingraham says, quote, and the H-1B visa program, saying, Rep. Greg Stoops saying Microsoft fired 16,000 Americans and then turned around and hired 9,000 workers under H-1B.
Yeah, and this is absolutely fantastic. And this is another wrinkle of this. This isn't happen to be illegal immigrants, but this is a legal way to get them in. And Canadians know all about this because this is how they're flooded. This is how Great Britain's flooded, as well as the EU. And it's much harder to get rid of immigrants that have legal status.
Congressman, back in 2016, President Trump
gave a fabulous speech where he basically said in part that he has used H-1B visa workers, but he thought at the time they shouldn't be available and the program should be ended. That was Trump in 2016, and I applauded.
Yeah, it should be ended, and my bill would absolutely do that. I think JD laid out a very good case in point. Microsoft fired 16,000 Americans and then turned around and hired 9,000 workers under H-1B. Disney fired 250 employees, and then just like what JD was
and
talking
pause
about,
it for a second, and now's the time to start implementing this. I know there was a big push to implement this when Trump first got into office, but that would have collapsed the economy. They're ready for this now, and they need to put this bill forward, and hopefully they get this thing through so we can get rid of H-1B visas.
had those 250 American employees train their replacements under H-1B. We have Americans that are skilled in all these different areas, and I think what the president is doing is trying to do what he can do within the administration to try to restrict this and make it more difficult. Obviously, the president can't change the law. That's Congress's job, and that's why I filed this bill. And I'm hopeful that we will have some type of immigration package as we come in to the end of this different Congress. And I've talked to Chairman Jim Jordan about this. Immigration comes through his Committee on Judiciary, and I'm hopeful that we will do an immigration package, and my bill will be part of that.
And going into 2028, that will be absolutely huge if they can get that done.
But also something that riled up a lot of people around the world, I will say, was the fact that Marco Rubio announced that they're pausing all visas to fully train those that are allowed to give them out as to how to and who to not give them out to.
And let's read this here with Marco Rubio.
Yes, Eric Doherty says, quote, Secretary Marco Rubio has just paused foreigner visa applications worldwide so that staff can be trained about blocking migrants who would likely need taxpayer welfare to live in America. And they're supposed to make investigations into if you have enough money for your stay. You need to have a plane ticket back. You have to show that you're going to leave the country, when you're going to leave it. But a lot of these things had been kind of muddled by even people that are for this.
We see what happens in other countries like Canada, like the UK, like the EU. They come over, they claim asylum, and then they get on permanent welfare, which comes out of American taxpayers' pockets or whatever country that they're in, those taxpayers' pockets.
Well, it was also happening in the U.S.
Allowed to visit your country should reflect the national interest. We said that from the very beginning. It was one of the directives that we got from the president. It's one of the things he ran on. And so our visa process basically is, and there are some times we'll deny people visas because of activities they've undertaken overseas. Other times it's people that have visas but are in the United States doing things that run counter to our national interest. And the law gives us the right, and in fact, I would argue the obligation to remove people like that from our country. And we're going to continue to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, sometimes somebody comes in and says, oh, I want to come in as a student. They're here as a student, and then once they're here, they're involved in nefarious activity. We're going to remove them from the country. But then maybe they're here as a researcher. Maybe they're here as I don't want to say journalist because you guys will get upset, but it could be anything. These are visitors to the country. A visa is a visitor. It's not a right. By the way, we deny visas every day all over the world. People will go to an embassy, they'll sit for an interview, and the consular officer will deny them a visa because of something that came up in their record, because of something that came up in their interview, whatever it may be. So
okay, and you can leave it there. And again, open borders does not work, and I'm glad to see that they're cracking down, and they did it in the right order. It took time to get boots on the ground, to set up these programs, to train these people as well. But now we're starting to see the results. It simply took time. The woke right at this point thinks it's still a year ago when nothing's happening. A lot is happening now.
But it also shouldn't be controversial to say we want to know who's coming into the country and we reserve the right to prohibit that. And as he was saying there, it's not a right to obtain a visa. It's not a right to go into any country you want. Usually, and most countries around the world still do follow all these processes and mechanisms, and people slip through the cracks and take advantage of the system. And if you don't want to even think about that or realize that that's happening because you have suicidal empathy, then you're just lost. Apologies. Thank you so much. No, hold on. Please have a good subscribe. It really does help us out. And like the video as well.
A long show there, Nat. You're falling apart on me.
You confused me a lot today. Rage Against Machine says, what an oxymoron, keeping New Yorkers safe. Exactly. And Don says, that there is an Alberta Credit Union and some other banks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Option Trader says, the sweetest part of this is that the left cries about ICE, but they can't mention the deportation numbers and zero illegal border crossings. Yep. And Option Trader says, Nat and Guy, you don't have this story, but several sheriffs of towns around New York have filed the joint lawsuit against the governor, saying she's sacrificing safety to pander to the left. Oh, that's great to hear, actually. Maybe we'll bring it up at the next one. Philip Espa says a lot of the woke right attacked Mr. Vance's wife because she entered under the H-1B visa. It's a ridiculous straw man that ignores the real issue of the program and that people take advantage of it, and that a lot of Americans and a lot of companies are now using that program to essentially get rid of the more expensive workers.
Well, American companies take advantage of it. Illegal immigration was actually something that the conservatives used to support through big business and things like that because they wanted cheap workers. That's changed over the years, and now the Democrats are the ones that support it, and they support it not for cheap work, but because they want new voter blocks coming in because they don't require voter ID and a lot of other things.
And they realized how easy it was to use that mechanism too for their own power. Hold on. K4U says polls are garbage, funded like the CBC. Yep. And hold on. Cape for You says you can rip on Daniel all you want. Her 10% doesn't outweigh 90%. And Krista says, hello, dear Alberta independents. Let's effing go already. Yes, I know. But now, at least Canada's giving a lot more reasons for Alberta to be independent. Why am I falling apart today?
It's almost like they're pushing Albertans to the polls here. Mark Carney couldn't do anything better for Alberta than what he just did, pulling out of this trade deal. And the Liberals are losing their mind over this Lake America thing.
Exactly. But now let's head over to RUMBLE. The show's not over. You can find our channel name down here. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll just continue on RUMBLE.
And I'm
Let's get ready to